the Grey Hat Beard podcast. Hello and welcome to part 2 of the Grey Hat Beard podcast. We're on to episode 27. We talked about the news in part 1, so do go back and listen to that if you haven't, because in this half we're going to be living la Viva Loca. And I need to keep saying Viva, not Vivo, and getting that right way. Because if you haven't heard, Microsoft announced last Thursday, which was the 4th of February, a new product, and it was Microsoft Viva. Now, some people had heard a bit about before it, some will listen to it and heard 4 different pillars that come as part of it, which we'll talk in a sec. And the initial view was, especially from those who live very close to the industry and work closely with it, was don't quite get it. There are a whole load of things in there that have been announced before. There was part of it which sounded like Project Cortex, part of it that was just LinkedIn Learning in another way, another part that was all about the comms aspect of there. And I don't think I'm going to drag Gary too much into it, that he was kind of, when he'd heard initially about it, without going into detail, was a little underwhelmed and didn't quite see where the value was. But then you read an article that really sort of changed your view in it, which was about the business value of some of this.
Yeah, I think my kind of view of it from the beginning, I don't think it was shared by many other people as well on Twitter. I think there was a lot of confusion from people who have been around the 365 space for a long time as well. So I think it was a little bit confusing. It was kind of like, it's just the same old stuff that we know, right? Just kind of thrown together in a package. Is it that much different? But then articles come out. One article in particular, Josh Burson, basically was set the scene. Talking about why this is such a big deal for the industry. It's a huge shake-up. There's going to be a lot of disruption as well. And I think as you read the article, which we'll link in the show notes, you'll see that this isn't just a reaction. Okay, of like, oh, well, we've got Teams and we've got these workplace analytics and all these other systems, and yeah, we'll just throw them together. It's years in the making. When you look at it and you look at going back through the acquisitions that Microsoft have made as well over the years, like LinkedIn coming kind of back into the fore now, the whole learning piece that's in there. So if you are kind of thinking, I don't really get it at the moment, read that article. I can guarantee you by the end you will understand why it's going to be such a big thing.
Absolutely. And I think for those who maybe haven't heard about Microsoft Viva, there are 4 pillars to it that are coming through, that are really where the functionality comes out around it. And they are the Viva topics, which is about getting the knowledge from your organization. Viva connections, which is very much your almost bit like your old intranet. Don't know if I want to say that, but it's personalized, focused on you, getting the connections with real people based on who you are and what you want to see. The Viva Learning, which is about getting that learning content that's appropriate to you, appropriate to what you do, and getting it in front of you from everywhere. And the Viva Insights, which is a balance, productivity and well-being, and that's pulling together a lot of that workplace analytics, that personal analytics, the headspace integration that comes through with those. So from a technical point of view, those are the 4 pillars, but I don't think that's really what we want to talk about today. And why we've got Steve here is what the real value to Microsoft Viva is to people.
Well, that's a good place
to you,
to start.
Steve. Yeah.
So unlike Gary, who questioned what it was all about, I think it took me about 30 seconds into Satya's presentation to message Alan saying, are we ready for this? Are we on the program? Because it's been announced and launched officially. My take on it is maybe slightly different, and I think the article that you referenced, Josh's article, I think is it sums it up from a technology standpoint and positions it well. It has been in the making for a long time. Lots of acquisitions don't make sense, but fundamentally, I guess I look at all of the technology releases from a different perspective, with a business lens as opposed to the technology itself. And as a leader of a business, particularly a services organization, I think it's it's fundamental to focus on employee engagement. It's paramount to our success as an organization. And when you think about the sector as a whole, services industry is huge. So it might be controversial to say, but for me, employee happiness is an important part of it's an important part, probably more important than our customers. At the end of the day, our customers are essentially buying services, buying expertise from the organization, and the very people who are delivering those services need to be in the right frame of mind. They need to feel safe and engaged and trusted. If you're in that space, then as an employee in any organization, if you're valued by the organization, if you're aligned to the company goals, if you're safe and able to express yourself fully in the workplace, then you're going to deliver more of the customer outcome that they're looking for than if not. You'll feel that you're able to express yourself. You'll go beyond, not because you have to, but because you want to. You're thoroughly enjoying where you are and what you're doing. That's why people take exams at 10 o'clock on a Saturday night, right?
Who does that?
but
I mean, if you generally a technology platform would not give that. So why do you think this would be any different? Is this not just taking that fluffy, let's make sure employee experience is important and let's pretend that some of the things we're already doing is part of that? Do you feel this is different as well?
Yeah, I think it's for me it's different because Microsoft are looking at this as a platform. This is a seismic change. This is the way I think Satya referred to it as ERP in the 80s looked at it, CRM and the sales focus in the 90s for the ERP, and then the next decade for CRM and the sales focus. But right now, employees are fundamental. The last 12 months has accelerated the challenge that we as leaders of businesses have, which is when we're in the office, we're able to connect. We've been out of the office for the last 12 months. Our organization has been out of the office for the last 12 months. Yet we've managed to sustain, through a great deal of energy and commitment, a level of engagement. And it's been a challenge. And I guess the last 12 months has exacerbated the problem that most people managers, leaders of people, departmental leads and so forth have struggled with. Multiple tools, multiple web-based tools from different vendors that have a different look and feel. So Microsoft has stepped back at a point in time, sometime in the last 5+ years, and said, actually, there's an opportunity if we bring all of these constituent parts together and deliver it as a unified experience, familiar experience to the end user, and make it easier to administer and manage, then why wouldn't you jump onto this technology, and why would you not embrace this? Because for a people leader, the technology is just it's a means to achieve the outcome. They're looking at it from I need the technology to be easy to use and familiar to use, and it would be great if I didn't have to manage 6 different suppliers with various different interface points. That in itself is a challenge for an organization. So if you can stand back from it, build a platform.
And even to manage how people get access to that, to manage the understanding of where to go to, I go to this for that, I go to this for that. Having that single platform simplifies it for the employee. It's one place to go to for it.
You also have to think, as you rightly point out, Steve, it's not something that's just been done in the last year as a knee-jerk reaction to the situation we find ourselves in. You can look back over the last 5 years, even longer than that, and go, actually, they've been building this slowly but surely. They've recognized that there is a strategic change that they need to make under the hood to enable this. And when you look at you think back to things like Delve and you think, well, that was a really weird change. And it was kind of like, well, actually, this new concept of graph, of linking people and artifacts and how it all worked, and everybody kind of went, all right, that's quite new. Now you look at it and you see where that's kind of evolved to with the workplace analytics, all of that data and how they can actually leverage that. And then you see something like this and go, All right, so they've got the data, they've got a way to leverage it, and now they can actually provide it in a useful format that actually organizations can make the most of quickly and easily, without having to implement a new system. It's built into what they have actually already started using on a day-to-day basis, and it's quite a shift for them, and it'll be quite a shift for organizations to kind of go, all of those other tools, what do I actually
Yeah.
need to complement this and to feed into it, and and
But I
to work
think
with this?
but that is the magic to a lot of the things we're seeing. If we look at the Viva learning, it's not you have to use Microsoft's tool for learning. They're working with SAP, Success Factors. They're working with
Yep.
Cornerstone. That's going to be providing that, and I'm sure they're going to make sure that you can be very clear with those things on. You're not going to lose those brand names. They're going to make sure they work with partners to have that come through. But you've got one place to go to. It's going to be within Teams. You've got, I think what's the one thing I don't 100% understand is what is Viva? I think some people will kind of go, I don't get what this is, but this is all Teams, isn't it? But I think there is a nice brand across all of it. And I think that brand will come through, and it'll be anything that's within Teams that's about employee experience. It's going to be Viva. So you have that singular way of thinking about things. And I think that will steer the technology along with it as well. So initially, there may not be an obvious this is something, but you'll see all those elements come together and make sense because of that single brand name as well. I think that will make a big difference to people as to what they think about different parts as well.
Yeah, I think it feels like a movement. It feels like somebody's actually said, let's not focus on the component or constituent parts of the technology. Let's actually stand back, put a platform together, and actually go and talk to business leaders and understand exactly what challenges they have. And right now, and maybe it's been accelerated, I'm not sure. The last 12 months has definitely taught a lot of people, or maybe opened their eyes to a few challenges across their organizations. I'm fortunate. I believed in. I have a long-standing belief that this is the core of any organization's success. Right from I was brief with my introduction, but having spent nearly 30 years, not just in the Microsoft ecosystem, but actually outside of Microsoft in industry, working for organizations where actually the organization consists of 200,000 people in 75 countries. You roll the clock back 25 years in that organization and said, how did the chief exec reach out to every single member of staff across the globe and deliver a consistent message? Forget the pandemic for a moment. I mean, you're talking DVDs and CDs actually being distributed to organizations because there was no live broadcast. It was, right, everybody get together in an auditorium to watch the DVD that the CEO is telling us all about what's going on this year. Or it's been cascaded through various iterations of emails down.
The voice messages that would go out to people, right. You'd get a voice message from the CEO to everyone at the same time, and you just look back at that now, which wasn't that long ago. It's mad.
Correct. But I think if I think about, and I felt cut off in the last 12 months. Now I consider myself to be easily approachable by anybody in our organization, and if they ask me a question, they'll usually get a straight answer, as you guys have experienced. But the little things have been a challenge. You think about if you're in the office, you stop and you just stop by somebody's desk, you talk about the football. But whilst you're talking about the football, you're evaluating the situation. Is the person happy? Are they content? Are they anxious? Very difficult to do that. You reach out to Teams or pick up the phone to them through Teams or open a voice chat, then a video chat. The chances are it's like, oh, the MD's reaching out. There's going to be a problem. There is a preconceived idea that the MD is calling me, therefore. Well, that's not always the case. So actually, you become isolated. So I think with technologies or the promise of what Viva is offering around pulling all of those constituent components together so that we can, as a leader, at any level in the organization, you can you've got your finger on the pulse, so you can see from the survey data that actually the mood in the organization is good or bad or inconsistent. You can look at building a culture where you're sharing content that's pertinent to the individuals. Even in this big sea of an organization, you can still hone in and deliver content that is specific to you. All of those are good steps towards building an effective culture in an organization. And if you then add to the mix the ability to bring in learning paths through a familiar interface where people can change their style to learning. I'll come back to the exams on a Saturday night, the bite-sized learning. That you're not restricted to a classroom where you've got to sit with 10 other people as part of an induction process. You're able to build momentum, gain and sustain a level of consistency across the organization in terms of why we're here, what's in it for me, how I fit into the machine, and you belong. And I think that's what my hope is. That's why I was excited by the announcement with Viva. It was like, well, finally, a business-centric solution that ties up, or a business-centric
different points as
all
well.
of these pieces together. And
I think
I was going to say, it just empowers your people managers, your communication managers, your marketing managers, leaders in general, to actually deliver a consistent message and actually read that message, understand and get the feedback on that message as well, which is pivotal. So,
and I think it's very much focused on the behavior as well. It's not just an HR system to manage.
Yeah.
It's focused on actually how people engage, what that behavior is, identify the points where you want to change that behavior to increase the well-being of your workforce. And I think that's one of the key things for it, is how it actually does that. Well, it's all the familiar tools that we're used to working with, but we're just working with them in a slightly different way. So I think it's a really exciting change that they're actually thinking about how technology works in this way at this level for a platform this size. It'd be intriguing to see what we're talking about in a year's time, but it also be intriguing to see what comes out at Ignite in a month's time.
Weeks time. Yeah.
The timing of this announcement around it, it kind of makes me think they wouldn't have been able to release any Ignite session names without having made this announcement, because they'll all have Viva in it. Everything will be geared around how it's coming together as an experience platform.
And I think the other bit is, Steve, I thought there was a great example. You pop by someone and you chat football, and you get those small body clues and things like that. You cannot get that easily remotely. Yeah, you can have those sort of video calls with people, but you don't get quite the same thing. I think the Viva insights to start to look at the electronic ways of doing that. Are people sending fewer messages or more messages? Getting that electronic way, getting those plus points, which would be sort of, is someone having too many meetings? Is having too few meetings? Getting those kind of mood of the organizations, which you can't get if you're not all in one place, but trying to get the electronic side of that. And I love with what Viva Insights, that virtual commutes they talk a lot about. And you encourage people sort of have that reflection at the beginning and end of each day. And can you see where people are doing that? Because if they're not finding time for doing that, people are getting fried, and you can get all those little pointers that all add up to a kind of feeling of how the organization is for the leadership team, making that decisions, being driven by those metrics, not just working out what they mean as well, but helping that steer some of the thoughts and conversations. I think would be really, really powerful with it.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to add on that. I think when we first looked at workplace analytics as a capability, in isolation, it looked like a solution trying to find a problem.
Yeah.
And could easily be interpreted as, oh, this is going to deep dive into what people are actually doing. How many connections how many people am I communicating with this week inside my organization, outside my organization? And in isolation, that looks quite daunting, because you could, as an accountant, look at the broad sheets and go, well, actually, we don't look particularly efficient or effective. And if we use that data to drive organizational efficiencies, then you'd be very concerned about how that information in isolation could be used in an organization. I think in this context, it does exactly That's exactly what it's designed to do. It gives us that insight that we're not getting whilst we're sat in the office, and that goes beyond the pandemic, because we spent a good 15 years working internationally with staff in different time zones. In some cases, the other side of the planet. You rely on what you're picking up through email, how they're communicating, how they are across video conferencing calls, etc. And that's very much what the last 12 months has been like. This as a platform, I think, gives more data, and I'm hopeful that put in the right hands, that data can be used to really drive the right behaviors across the organization, and really focus on making sure we're providing that safe environment for employees to express themselves, which is what it's all about at the end of the day. You have to feel safe coming to work. That's part of that. I need a trust. I need that. What is it? The mutual obligations from the organization. I need to believe that what I'm putting in, I'm being treated fairly, equally. I can express myself, and if I can do that in a safe environment, then I'm going to give more, because I want to be in the environment. So it's for us as leaders, and I think managers in general, we've always struggled with this. If I can't talk to you one-to-one, if I can't talk to you face-to-face, if I can't read those cues, then how am I actually going to establish what's going on in my organization? And the bigger your organization becomes, the more reliant you are on individuals to share their opinions, and maybe their opinions are not always as clear as they need to be. So having trust in the data, having the right systems in place to assess the mood, I think it's a great opportunity for organizations, those that have already got a fantastic culture and engagement model in place, to sustain that and build on that. Those that are hoping that they have that but aren't sure how to measure it, I think we'll get a lot from this. And those that already know they've got work to do, it's a great way to measure baseline where they are, and set some plans in motion, and see if they can evolve. So I think I said at the beginning of this, it's seismic, and I think it really is. I think it propels Microsoft into another space that Microsoft are not known for being, which is, this is talking to the business. This is talking to the business at a level where you're talking to the business leaders to say, actually, we can help you make your business more effective and more efficient, and a better place to be, not through just switching technology on, not by selling you some more licenses, but actually
they will
shining
do
a
that
light.
as well.
They will do that.
Of course, of course, right?
Yeah.
But there is something different there about what the proposal is around this. So.
And I think we talked about in the last show, I think they announced just before we started Work Lab, which is effectively their magazine almost sharing how work works, and that scientific element, that numbers. And I think the Josh Bursin article sort of fits in with that. It's not just here's a technology, it's understanding the science, understanding the right thing, understanding the ethos around this. And also, Steve, you talked about making sure that data's in the right hands. The one thing, and I might be gullible, but I trust Microsoft to kind of do the right thing more with the data. They're talking so much about the ethics of artificial intelligence and the ethics of that data. We saw with the productivity score that they made a change. They backtracked from having more of the personal data. They kind of go, yeah, actually, you're right. We shouldn't do this. They're listening to the right thing. I don't think they're perfect, don't get me wrong, but they're trying to expose some of the questions about it, and making sure that we're there to do the right thing with this data, not make it available so that people can do the wrong thing and focus in the wrong area as well.
I think it's really, because when they bought LinkedIn, there was a lot of concern on how they're going to use this data, and none of those fears have played out. Same with GitHub. Oh, how are they going to use all of this data? How are they going to change it? Both of those purchases came under a lot of scrutiny from the users who actually used those systems, and Microsoft proved themselves not to have messed with it or changed it or broken it or done a yammer and tried to rebuild it and integrate it completely. They've left them independent. but it also means that they've got a massive amount of data about how we work. And they probably the only organization on the planet with that scale of data where they can actually now say, right, well, we want to get proper science done on this data, proper analysis done on this data, to actually influence what they say is best practice, because it's proven by academics who are peer reviewed, as opposed to, oh well, we've just kind of looked at the 300,000 people. Well, no, actually we're looking at 3 million a day, 300 million a day. So it's quite a different sort of starting point that they can actually go, we have the science to prove this, and not many others have any science to disprove it.
Yeah.
So
I think the other side, I love that they've also brought knowledge and learning into this, that it's about sharing that knowledge internally. It's understanding what people are doing and providing the tools for people to be able to do things effectively. I mean, we've had plenty of conversations. Gary and I have some great chats about how can we get that right knowledge from the people that have it to the people that need it at the right time. And it's such a good way of doing that. And I think we knew Viva Topics was coming in some form because of Project Cortex and the bits there. But by then combining that with learning, of saying, here's what you need to know, here's learning to help you learn the right thing as well. It's all part of the same story together. It works better together. And certainly one of the, when it came to Cortex, and they talked about bringing out Syntex, and they talked about this knowledge, which has now become Viva Topics, all these different little small elements. And I can see Steve kind of pulling a face. You're right. There was all these different bits that didn't mean much to people. Now it's combined together in a more consistent story. You can still get those different elements. We talk about selling lots of licenses. Viva's not going to be one big lump license that you have to spend hundreds on. You can work out what works best for you in the different areas. So that I feel there is, yes, it's going to be more money. We're not gullible. You get more functionality. You're going to have to pay certain amounts for it, but you can work out which parts work for you and make that sensible choice around it. And it feels like a good path forwards with it.
On that, hopefully they will change the licensing model more fundamentally, so that you're not just buying levels of technology, you're actually buying services, capabilities that are grouped together in a more logical way, to actually, so we try and remove some of these continual licensing challenges of, technically you can do this, well, what does that actually give me as an end user or as a business? Well, technically you can do this.
Yes.
So I think there's an opportunity there for them to really revolutionize how they license it based on Viva as well.
Yeah, from the technology side, that's the other thing as well, is that there's lots of, we've seen the wheel in Microsoft 365. Viva's going to be part of all of that wheel. Is that's the single experience, right? It all has to go in that direction, which I think Teams has come along and given that to a degree with SharePoint and the communications. This is just, again, kind of bringing the whole platform along, so that it feels like there's more direction than there has been. I think that's going to be interesting to see how that plays out as well, with all the different areas, because like we said, the 4 pillars, they are quite big areas just across Microsoft, right? And the different product groups that are there. So having that single product approach is definitely going to be a challenge, but it's great to hear that they've been at this for years, which when you first hear it, you kind of think maybe a bit opportunistic, but it's definitely not. So it's going to be definitely interesting to see how it carries on, how vendors are going to change their approach to get into this platform as well. Rather than saying don't go to Microsoft, come to us and be on the outside, it's more of, well, no, we're just going to kind of go into that platform. And as I think about it, I'm thinking more of Microsoft kind of built their business. I don't want to call it an app store, but it's almost like that, right? It's like you go through
the
Viva,
same thing,
and you get to whatever provider that you're using now, but through this one system.
I think there's some lessons. I think there are lessons that are being learned on that one, because I think we work with at least 4 different providers in this space. So it's 4 different contracts, 4 different engagements, 4 different user interfaces, and if you're running any level of IT in an organization, then you'll look at this and say, actually, Microsoft don't need to take all of those partner solutions and draw all of that in. If they can provide a platform and you can connect them together, then actually that's a more successful model, I think, from an adoption standpoint in an organization. I'll give you a unified interface that you can work with, and you can carry on working with those providers for that content. We don't want to go and buy all of that content because that's painful. And also, we don't want our customers to have to end contracts early or think about the additional change and the cost of change, because this isn't just a license switch. There is a fundamental cost to change an organization, and any technology that organization is using. So instead of having to focus on asking the workforce to adopt 4 different interfaces for 4 different products and remember 4 different things, I can surface that through Teams, through Viva, then much easier.
And just to bring down that cost of change is you're changing platforms, you've got your technical change, you've got licenses, but all that time lost to people, training them up, that kind of readjusting to things, that thing you may not see quickly on your bottom line, but it is a real cost to everyone, to the employee experience for everyone every time you keep changing that as well. So putting to one place, and I think Microsoft is doing that good job of providing options for partners to not only just provide the content, but provide innovation within that as well. We've seen it with meetings, apps and things in Teams, and I think we'll see exactly the same here, that it's not just going to be here, put your video in here for your learning. That could be in the future, mixed reality. You can get mixed reality learning, and they're providing different types of content, providing ways to connect in with that insight data and surfacing that to people in a different way, being able to analyze that with your own special algorithms and surface that through insights. I think the future is being able to give people the opportunity, not just Microsoft. And I think that is, you said it right at the beginning, Steve, this is a platform, and it's for partners, vendors, even organizations themselves to be able to plug into that platform is absolutely key.
Yeah, it's exciting. I think it's exciting. I mean, the cost of change to an organization when implementing new technology is typically 6 times more than the stated implementation cost of the project, because everybody forgets that you need to bring the workforce on the journey. Every employee needs to adopt that new way of working. So if you can have a unified interface, a familiar interface, then actually the change that's being made is so much smaller. But it changes the construct for partners, the opportunity. The thing that excites me the most is that we are not just technology or a solution provider. As an organization, as a partner, we spend a large percentage of our time working with our customers to help their business adopt a different working practice. So we're working with those departments, and for many years now, we've had the challenge in this space is, can you build me a SharePoint solution to do an intranet? Can you build me a SharePoint solution to do X? Can you build me a Power App to do Y? The idea of actually being able to say, here is a platform, and what we will do now is work with you to adopt that working platform, start to pull the data through, and then start to understand the data so that we can actually help you as an organization increase your engagement. That's new territory. That really is consulting in the business consulting in the truest sense. That's a great opportunity for the partner community out there to look at this and say, actually, I can take my business in a slightly different direction. I can start to actually consult in areas of the business that previously I've just been seen as a technology partner. So that's a great opportunity for the Microsoft partner community as much as it is for Microsoft. So
I was going to say, where do we see this all going next? You know, we've got Ignite coming up and over the next year, but I think, Steve, you've kind of nailed it there, really. It's that opportunity to consult on a lot of this stuff is huge. But I guess anyone else, what do we think is going to come with this? It's a big announcement, but it feels like there's a lot more coming still.
Well, thankfully, not a rename. I think they've dodged that one this time, so well done.
I don't know, if you search Bing for Viva topics, at least as of today, you get something about urology. So hoping that's not gonna be around for too long. But
I think the thing that we're going to see is different areas, focusing on different areas of this. In the same way that so many platforms, they are platforms and there are areas of specialization. It kind of reminds me a bit about Dynamics. You've got different core pillars that you say, I'm going to invest in this capability and then I'm going to extend it. I'm going to get partner products in and apps that are going to extend what that does. And then I can then join this up to this other part. And it kind of feels like that as a platform. And I think what we'll see is certain people focusing on different areas. There will be areas of interest, syntax, the AI, search in the topics. You'll have the workplace analytics folks kind of moving into the insights. You'll have the comms people moving into the connections. You'll have people starting to really kind of dig into it a lot. And we will get more and more understanding of, as a platform, what it is capable of offering as we learn more about each of those core pillars that it's currently offering. And then, I think, within a year, they'll probably be saying, oh, right, might introduce another pillar. It's theoretically, they've really thought this one through and built it as a genuine platform that is scalable to bring other capabilities into it, other capabilities in terms of new features in each of those pillars, but also additional pillars as well.
So what you're saying, Al, is that left bar on Teams, they're going to bring in more space because there's going to be a lot coming there soon.
Or they're going to have a much more intuitive interface where you just think it and it just pops up. Yeah.
But joking aside, I think you're right. And I think the partners bringing in, finding the capabilities, finding not necessarily the gaps, but the opportunities within that is where it's going to be really interesting as well. Seeing that brought even further and even cleverer, keeping Microsoft on their toes. And I like that Microsoft kind of putting that opportunity out to people as well. Interesting times.
Yeah.
I think that is probably about there where we need to wrap up and get on with there. But we'll put a whole load of links in the show notes. So if you haven't heard about Viva, there's some great videos. I highly recommend the opening video that Satya did, because that story behind it just tells you so much more. Don't do the techie thing and just go and look at the technology, because it won't make sense. I think we've all seen that when we did that, it didn't make sense. Listening to that story and realize where it's going to go, think about that brand, because that is such the power of it. Thank you, Steve. That was really good. Really great to hear that side and different perspective of things as well.
It's been a pleasure. Thanks, guys.
And otherwise, we will leave you and speak to you all in a couple of weeks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Grey Hat Beard Podcast. The song Drink Up My Mateys was brought to you by Black Bones under a non-commercial attribution license.